Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brett Mueller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the Future Proof Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Mueller. I'm joined today by Jeff Dillon from EdTech Connect. Jeff, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brent. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So, Jeff, we always start right with your career journey and your background. So, talk to us about how everything leading up to getting to EdTech.
Yeah, well, if you've read the book Outliers from Malcolm Gladwell, it's a lot of it's about the timing. And back in the late 90s, I was working at a university, my first web development job as a webmaster at a university. For 8 years, I did that. Then I moved to California and I was a web director for Sacramento State University for 13 years, so 21 years in higher ed. And coincidentally, 2020 comes around and I've had this idea. I was the buyer, the implementer of software solutions at Sacramento State. And I got tasked with this job to look up and find a new cloud workflow solution. We had this legacy on-prem workflow solution. I'm like, yeah, no problem. I've been doing this for long enough. I can go find something. And I was paralyzed with not being able to find something, but too many options. I'm like, and I was plugged into the largest system in the country, the CSE system. I was in all the Slack channels and the EDUCAUSE groups, and I was pinging everybody, and I still couldn't narrow down my list. It was really hard to get down to, look, I can't talk to 15 companies. I want like 3. So like, why do we have these barriers? Like we have these great organizations like EDUCAUSE and the HOOG and the Benchmarking Institute that serve as a model to help higher ed choose technology and curate solutions, but they're kind of antiquated because the university is at the middle of that model. The university pays their big dues to these organizations. They have access to who goes to the conferences and the data is like a year old. I'm like, yeah, I want my EDUCAUSE annual report, but why don't we crowdsource this? What if we crowdsource this and say, hey, if you have a .edu email address, you can sign up with that. We have your domain name. Mm-hmm. So I was doing this while I was working at the university. I'm like, I want this tool. And I was building it while I was there. And it was really we turned into this LinkedIn, a G2, and a Wikipedia, all for higher ed. But I started building it right before the pandemic. It was coincidentally 2 weeks before the pandemic, which was pretty good timing. If you think about what happened in 2020 and universities were forced to go remote, basically, and technology was at the center of everything. So my background really was, I was trying to solve a problem of, how do you get to your short list quick? And that problem has been exponentially almost getting worse with all the solutions available out there. I created, if you go to edtechconnect.com, there's an image that I created called the periodic table of technology, and it has like 90 categories of technology. And so you can see like how fast it's evolving, with AI. We'll probably talk about that a little bit too, but that's the long answer there.
I love it. And so you launch this, and so your original vision versus, I guess, where you think it's going to go. Talk about that.
Yeah. So the original, it wasn't even a business at first. Like I didn't plan on quitting my job. It was more like, hey, let's build this platform. And I took my closest friends and we just started populating the database with software we were using. And then vendors started contacting us and we're like, hey, we want to access to your data. We want to like highlight our listing. And I'm like, hey, I gotta leave my job here and turn this into a business. So the original model was really kind of like that vendor subsidized G2. You claim your profile. Everyone gets a free listing, every vendor, software provider. Right. But if you want access to our data, like at an aggregate level for a university, not to our user base, but you want to see what's happening at all these participating universities and start seeing these trends, you want to highlight your listing, embed a video, you pay for that extra exposure. And so that was the original model. That was really took off and it was doing well, but it's evolved. And what I realized as you start something, this wasn't my first venture. I started a web development company back in, my 20s when it was the web was important for like tourism. And so it's really, what I realized is you got to be able to pivot and that's where we started. And we're moving to some different areas now.
Really cool. And so the higher ed typically is a slow moving industry, but as that shifted, tell me what you're seeing, right? And as you look down the road about kind of traditionally how it is, and then how
That's a
AI.
yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Like I've been in it so long, and I remember when I first went into higher ed from the private sector, when I sold my first business, I realized, oh my gosh, like I just want to buy a piece of software. By the time I get it, there's already a new one out. It moves so slow. That largely those systems are still kind of in place as procurement cycles, all the security vetting and the accessibility, all that has to happen. So I wouldn't say it's changed a whole lot, but what's the current environment is so tenuous right now with the new administration, with all these requirements being put on universities. There's hiring freezes, and there's this phenomenon out there called the enrollment cliff that really started back 18 years ago when the birth rate declined. So we knew this was all coming, but it's coincided with this private competition, right? All these there's Coursera's, there's Khan Academy, there's all these other ways you can learn.
Right.
Higher ed, although they are still slow, they're being forced to move faster. And now, with AI, that's even magnified that, 100x. Yeah, it's still slow, but I think only the schools that really adapt are gonna survive. There's schools closing or consolidating, a few every month. It's pretty crazy right now.
So before we jump into the AI stuff, because I really do want to get into that. So tell me so there's schools like Southern New Hampshire and Arizona State and others that have really launched their online schools. How has that impacted? Because I would imagine that's forcing some of the things you just talked about with consolidation and private competition as well.
Yeah, luckily we have leaders within academia like ASU, like the CSU system, Southern New Hampshire. There's a few more out there that's who we're competing with. These schools there's level of schools, right? There's Research 1 schools. Well, there's the Ivies. There's Research 1, there's Research 2, there's all the state institutions, community colleges. And if you look at, they all have their unique challenges. And what we're seeing now is these Research 1 and these bigger schools like Arizona State, they're being hit the hardest. I mean, we see what's happening at an Ivy school, Columbia. It's really a nightmare with all the protests and things like that. But they're being hit with research funding being taken away. And even despite that, what they're able to do with things like adopting AI is do more with less and be relevant in today's, curriculum. ASU built it into their curriculum. They were the first one to partner with OpenAI to build it in their curriculum. And now CSU, California State University, is the biggest system, in the world that has signed a contract with OpenAI as well. So at least I think that's going to help push academia in the way that it probably needs to go. Smaller schools it's going to be tough to really leverage, they don't have probably the budgets of these bigger schools. But yeah, you're right. Those bigger schools are really setting the mark. It's not only about, it's about having some part of their strategic plan or a role designated on campus, like a chief digital innovation officer, or, they've made an effort to stay on the leading edge, because often higher ed doesn't want to be on the bleeding edge, right? They want to be kind of second to see where it's already succeeded.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So now let's fast forward into the conversation we want to get into, which is, and you kind of alluded to it before we jumped on, which is the AI and the impact of AI, data, automations, RPA, all of it coming into higher ed, and how EdTech is kind of pivoting and helping accelerate that.
I can give you a couple examples, and one of them would start with site search, right? Site search is at the core of AI, and higher ed digital experiences. If you go to a campus's website and you use a search, it's a pretty frustrating experience often. And a lot of internal higher ed administrators have almost given up. They've said, you know what, people don't use our search anyway. They just use Google and they come to us, after they've done their Google search. And that's not quite the case. So what you're seeing now is schools starting to, they want to embrace AI, but they don't know how. They see all these generative AI summaries and like, oh gosh, we need that, but they don't know why. They just think they use it for their personal travel planning and their other use cases, but they know they need it, but they're not sure how. So we're seeing, when you see a search bar now, the expectations are changing, from students to all these different audiences. So the companies that are doing really well and doing this right are the ones that are taking it from the back office first, the back end. So the search algorithm needs to be being improved by AI first. If you go out there and look on campus websites, how many of them are using generative AI on their campus search? they're not. There's a couple that are trying it and they're not working very well. So we're really coming close to that, but we're not quite there yet. But there is progress on AI powered search for your website. It's one of the biggest low hanging fruit things I've seen out there. And another one I'll kind of get into is personalization. It used to be there was this DXP you would buy. It's there's a content management system and you like move to a DXP because it would tie everything together for you. All the touch points people are coming in at. And that was like an infrastructure change, right? You'd have to like implement this new CMS with all these different modules, a customer data platform, might have a search in it. And that was quite a project, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But now with AI, with a snippet of code, schools are able to personalize much easier and quicker and give the students what they want at whatever time they are in that enrollment funnel. So they might not, that one page is only going to serve certain people. And it kind of be tweaked on what you know about people using AI. So there's a couple examples that are probably closest to where higher ed needs to and is, adopting AI.
Right. And then, so how is EdTech, helping, right? Because again, you were just talking about some of your programs and how you want to embrace and accelerate some of this.
Yeah. And the good thing, like, I know this shows a lot about your founder's journey and how we grow. And I think one of the important things to really remember is you never quite end up where you started. You got to be really open to pivoting. I mean, especially what we thought, this model where I said we're this G2 for higher ed. Yeah, we're that, but we're moving into this more of an educational model, because what we're seeing and what, I have a list of 30,000 people on my email list and I'm surveying them. What do you want? What do you need? They need to know how to use AI. And I follow all these thought leaders out there and I feel like I'm sorely behind because I can't keep up with it. But the higher ed, common staff person is really behind and they don't quite know, should I use this tool at work? How do I use it? What are the implications if I use this? So we're starting an AI training academy to start with. And out of that, we already have some consulting engagements, like an AI readiness plan. You're kind of in this boat now where we have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pages, and we'll come in and say, hey, we need to do an audit for you and get you AI ready. So that's a further engagement, but we're planning this AI training academy where I'll have like AI fundamentals, mastering prompting, essential AI tools, building custom GPTs, AI generated videos, things like that. So that's what I'm excited about for this year, 2025.
You should be, because honestly, it's sorely needed. And if you can teach, it's teach the teachers, right? Teach the professors, and hopefully that trickles down, because the students are already playing with it probably 10 times more than the professors, right? And so hopefully what you can do is start to get the student feedback as well, right? Because they're going to come at it from a completely different angle than the professors.
At least we're at a point now. If you remember in November 2022, when ChatGPT came out, first, I would call it a semester in higher ed. That first semester was crazy because students had discovered this cheating tool, whatever they were using it for, because no one else, the faculty hadn't discovered it yet. And higher ed was in this boat of like, it was a binary decision, right? Like, am I going to outlaw this or not? Are you letting that being used in your class? You're not. And I think we're past that, at least. I mean, most of higher ed, where it's not if we're going to be using AI in our classroom, it's how. It's how are we going to, you can't, one of the early things I heard was one faculty member was saying, I assigned my students 2 assignments, do one with AI and do one without. And let's just see how you can improve it. I'm like, that was a great start, back in the day.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting, because I know that there's some really good thought leaders in higher ed that are thinking about the implications of using it, but also using it with the right sources. And I do think that there's some momentum behind that, much like when you do a perplexity search, right? And you get the sources, so they're valid. But yeah, the fear is that, we're in the Wild West a little bit. And I think you're right. We're starting to settle in and start to get some thought leadership around how best to use it. And higher ed has unique challenges. And when you go to K through 12, they even have harder challenges, because like we were talking about that in an earlier episode. And I feel like that's really something that needs to be thought through.
I get that question a lot. Are you going into higher ed? Because there is a good overlap in solution providers across both segments. I often say probably not in the near future. We're pretty much have a lot to do in higher ed, but it's worth That's what we're talking about.
So, as you look out, tell me what you've seen in the industry in general and where you see it going. Because again, I think the next 1 to 2 years are going to be very disruptive in everything. So I really want to focus in higher ed.
Yeah, right around, I can't, if I get the years right, it's been 5+ years to where the big thing in higher ed, the new thing was like, I need a chatbot. It was like, the use case might be an advisor type of a chatbot or an IT chatbot where I need to reset my password or however they want to engage. But we knew AI was here. AI wasn't even talked about too much, but it was called in that context of being a chatbot. And that's just not really a differentiator anymore. So
Right.
it has to really be baked into everything we're doing. So I think, there's a merger that just happened this week. Gravity, which is an alumni and donor relation platform, acquired, or they merged with Ocelot and Ivy, two big chatbots. That really shows that they're really struggling to keep up now because we really need to be attached to the enterprise at some level. I think you don't hear much like Gemini and Copilot. I use Gemini and Copilot probably least out of any AI. I use OpenAI.
Me too.
I use Perplexity a little bit. I never I don't know. But what's funny? If you look at the rankings of like how they're performing, Google is starting to creep up everywhere. If you look at the new text to video, they crush everybody, although it's not available to the public yet with their VO2. Gemini ranks high with everything. I'm not quite sure why I'm not embracing Gemini yet. I still have access to it. But I think Google and Microsoft are going to basically end up passing everyone or keeping up just because can you imagine what they're going to be able to do with the content they have with your Gmail, your calendar, with YouTube? Probably getting off on a little sidetrack here too.
No, but I agree. I don't know how you beat what the assets Google has.
Yeah, I don't know how you compete with it. But I'm in the spot where I'm like, why am I not using it? So maybe it's just a little bit of the UI or something. OpenAI kind of kills it with their UI and that
they do. I think that's it. The ease of it. Yeah, I feel like Grok and Claude and OpenAI are just a little easier than Gemini right now. I think Google will figure that out, and I think it'll become more. I think what Google's plan is a little different. At least my thought is that they're trying to integrate it into everything you do within Chrome and Gmail and more, make it more of like it's just a natural add-on tool that and maybe that will be how we use it. Right, where it's not a separate thing.
How we use it. I think we're struggling for that killer use case right now where, like in banking, once you have direct deposit, you're basically not going to leave your bank. Or like, I remember in 2008, Chrome came out and I'm like, hey, who needs another browser? And I can't remember like the last time I used another browser. I used to be in development. I'd have to use other browsers, but it's I feel like the browser war is all over again, with this.
It is funny too, right? Because, I'm the same way. Like I only use Chrome and even on my iPhone, I don't use Safari hardly at all. And it just gets crazy.
Yeah. And it just shows that you can be late to the game. Like Google just seems to nail everything. The funny thing I think is how Apple's missed the boat. I mean, can they really be this bad? And I think there's a lot of theories behind it where they don't have room for error. I think they probably are my theory is that they're probably testing. It's just not, it has to be so perfect. And it's just not there. It has to be like 99 point something, working iOS.
You know what I think, Jeff, also though, is with Apple, because they're really just consumer electronics and that's their niche, that they can partner with the best and get away with it.
Yeah.
Right? If you're Google, you can't do that. If you're Microsoft, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you have all the email and everything. And whereas, if you just have the phone, the tablet, and the Mac, you can partner with any of these and you can use best of breed. And I feel like that's probably part of their philosophy.
Well, they partner with ChatGPT, but the problem is everyone just uses the ChatGPT standalone app. They don't use Siri because Siri came out of the gates and sucked. And then they're going to have to like rebrand it or kill Siri and launch something else that's
right. They're going to have to reimagine and merge Siri with ChatGPT or what. Yeah, totally agreed. So how does those kind of things impact the things in higher ed? Because I would imagine, right, is that part of the problem is that we have all these options, but you talk about hard to embrace. Imagine going to a professor, right? Your challenge already is to get them to embrace AI. Now you tell them that there's at least 5 different models they should be playing with, right? Until you build a GPT where they can play with them and see the difference, Yeah.
Well, my advice in the training is going to be just pick one you like and stick to it. I probably would recommend OpenAI right now for most people. But
Me too.
if you want to go look at our Claude training, we'll probably have one of those. But I want to go back to your original question that I kind of got diverted on, which was how is EdTech helping
Yeah.
with these solutions? And the model really fits well into this evolution because we're a crowdsourced model. So basically what happens is we're getting data from, number one, we're getting it from different ways, but we crowdsource data. Anyone with a .edu email address just signs up and tells us what they're using. So we're able to keep up with these, and that's very valuable data because it's better than the screen scraping data we go and get from universities where like we can tell what you're using from snippets of your code. We get data from the Department of Education, we get data from all these other places, but the crowdsourced data, once you say you're using, X tool at your school and 2 or 3 people say that, your profile will get escalated and you'll become more of a player on the platform just by being claimed and being rated and reviewed. So that's the short answer. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's one of the ways I really am excited that we're getting data from AI too, but that's really in the early stages. So we're going to have data from 3 or 4 different sources and have probably the best real-time technology stack information that we really want to draw usage and be a valuable tool for both higher ed making decisions and vendors trying to break into that space and maybe getting ad hoc reports or subscriptions and things like that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Makes a ton of sense. As you look down the next 1 to 2 years, is it easy to see where EdTech is going? Obviously, the AI Academy is going to be a really big thing. Can you looking beyond that, do you see some innovations happening? Do you see some areas where you can, steer the company that way to help, accelerate this stuff?
Yeah, it's really hard for me to see past a year anymore.
I think it's hard for anybody, by the way, Jeff.
Try to keep up with some of these podcasts that are dropping weekly. They have a list of 20 updates in 1 week of what's happened with all these platforms. And one of my favorite quotes is like today, and it's a presentation on one of my slides, is today is the least capable AI you will ever use. And literally like yesterday, they didn't even have that. So what I see, we have a big year right now just because we're doing this big website overhaul and we're enhancing our listings with AI and we're launching the Trading Academy. But I think a little further than that, I could probably see is the agentic movement to where I think AI higher ed is going to be slow to this. There's not a real great use case yet. The personalization, the enrollment story is probably the first one where schools need to keep that incoming class, big. What if you set up an account at a school when you're looking at one, you got an AI assistant, Samantha, that knows everything about you that said, hey, we're having a basketball game tonight. You should come check it out. You live in the area. Or there's so many ways agentic could take off. Like I can't even talk about this to higher ed right now because it just freaks them out. Like we're not quite there yet.
Right, makes their head explode, right?
Yeah. But for EdTech, for us ourselves, I think keeping up with that space and like who are the players, who's going to develop the first killer app that's really an agentic app. There's a couple of companies out there that I'm pretty excited about to watch. But I would say those are kind of the big things for the next year.
And Jeff, make sure you watch. I had Alexander from Smith OS on, and they built an interface to build agentic AI agents. And it's really, you can, what that helped me visualize, just on his homepage, visualize some of the use cases and how you bring them to life. And I think that also will spur some ideas. Yeah.
I got one for you.
But anyway, I'm sorry.
I got one for you. I got to give you this one too. This is not higher ed specific. This company doesn't pay me or anything, but I saw a demo of a company called NinjaCat. Have you heard of them?
No.
NinjaCat,
I'll have to check them out.
They do a lot of automotive and financial, so big data sets. And they did this demo. You should look up their demo. It's incredible, and interacting voice interaction. And they basically replaced a $300,000 a year data scientist, with their agent.
I will watch that demo for sure because and maybe I'll try to get that somebody from them on. Because my other company is we own a data company and we have so much data. And one of our problems is we could do 1,000 use cases, right? And part of our is what do we do with it, right? What is the best use of some of those data assets? Right. You're talking about billions and billions of data points that come in a day, right? And you just think about, just the database of in the US, and you're talking about 350 million, people. And so when AI can start to do modeling out of that, you can't imagine it all goes back what you were saying is personalization. How do you personalize things for people? That's what they want anyway. The hardest part right now is there's so many things that are not personalized.
Right. You're right on. And AI really, what I've learned is it really helps teach you to ask the right question. I've always been pretty good at asking questions. So I'm falling right into this is like, if you can learn to ask the right questions, you're going to get so much more out of AI. And that's what the data science is all about.
Yeah. I did want to ask you one thing. And just because you play with it a lot, and one of the things I keep wondering is right now, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? To your point. So to kind of expand on what you're saying, if you really see what a good prompt looks like and what the output comes out, but people don't understand what a real prompt does versus what they put in. And it's not even close. It's like they're not even in the ballpark and they don't realize it because they think, hey, that was a really good output. And I've seen prompts that are 2 Google Doc pages long. And you go, my goodness, when you see what comes out of that, you're like, wow. So my question to you is, do you see prompt engineering continuing down that, or you think the AI will just get great at simplifying?
I think we're almost past that. Like, I feel like 6 months ago, I would have said, yeah, like, but I almost feel like we just need to teach our people how to ask the right questions. And you almost have your AI create the prompts for you now.
Yeah.
But
Well,
again,
and that's where I was going.
Scaling up this ladder, it's a whole new way to think. I have my own podcast and I was just interviewing someone the other day and she's like, you know what? I'm actually using AI to like give me some draft emails to send to people. I'm like, wow, great job. Like,
yeah.
it's because like higher ed is so far behind, basically.
Yeah.
Like, that's great. Everyone should start doing that. Like, it's being built in a little more.
It's baby steps, right? You got to start somewhere, right? Yeah. Yeah. But to your point, when you see what's out there, you realize how much further down there's other people are than that. And
like when I saw like guys, NinjaCat showed us the back end of like what their prompt looks like, and then I'm like, oh, that's a good looking prompt. It was long, but it was clean. It was like it was like bulleted out. I'm like, okay, it was like a 2-page prompt, but he showed it.
Yeah. Well, and I think some of the big long prompts are either, to me, that I've seen, are either data related or teaching a chatbot rules in which to follow. Yeah. So you keep it in the lane that which you designed it for versus, writing emails and copy and that kind of stuff. You can get that out with pretty short stuff. But you're right. One of the other things that I've seen is what is scary, but is crazy. And I think this would blow some people away is if you go and you start using like Lovable or Bolt and you start the prompting, right? And then ChatGPT will write better prompts to put in there. Next thing you know, you have a whole user interface.
Yeah.
And it's mind-blowing that it can do that.
I got to tell you my Lovable story. That was just 1 week ago. I'm trying to prototype the new EdTech Connect. I just found Lovable. I heard it on a podcast. I know there's Bolt and Lovable and Cursor and all those. And I just landed on Lovable. And I dove in. I was on for 3 hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours. It was too much time that I should spend it. But I ended up with almost a completed next version of EdTech Connect. I'm not going to be able to launch with this, of course. Like there's too much there.
But it gets you 80% of the way there, right?
Probably 80%, maybe a little less. But what I thought of, I'm like, why am I doing this? What am I doing here? The reason I'm doing this is because I'm getting a professional in, and now I can show them exactly what I want. Like, hey, I hooked it up to the ChatGPT API. It's exactly what I want with some holes. And now I could give it to my pro guy and say, finish this up. I was able to do that in 2 to 3 hours for like, I think I ran into the limit, I had to pay my $20, but it was incredible.
Yeah, right. And you think about how much time, energy, and effort it would have taken and the back and forth with the development team to just be able to do that.
Right. And the funny thing is there's this perception, especially in higher ed, that somehow using AI is cheating, I think. And it comes from the academia, right? I think some of it's there. Yeah. But when you talk about code, I don't think that's there. For some reason, that's cool. But when you talk about writing, no,
it's
that's
cheating.
Creative.
Right.
It's like, no, that's our thing. It's really funny to hear. No one ever pushes back on like, you had AI write your code? Like, no, it's fine. It might be bloated code for now, but.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right. So I have to ask you this question. 2 questions, right? One is, what's something that Jeff uses AI or ChatGPT in some way to be a better productive CEO or founder?
I use it for so many little things that I won't talk about, but I think one that maybe can push the limits a little bit is I have a team, a pretty small team, and I often don't want to bother them with some things. And so I use it as like what I told you about, how I want to launch this AI Academy. I have this idea. I have a couple courses. Here's where our revenue's coming from now. Here's where I want to go. What do you think about this? How many courses should we provide? How many people out of our 31,000 will subscribe to it? At what price? I asked it. I spent probably 15 minutes on this prompt, and I used the deep learning, the OpenAI one that came, that's now available in the $20 a month version. I have a whole plan now that it kind of confirms some things. That it's my strategic business advisor, in a way. So you can see him. I feel like I was in this webinar the other day, AI for writers, and this guy named Mitch Droll said, AI isn't here to replace us. It's here to make us superhuman. I'm like, that's it.
We call them digital coworkers. It's there to make you 3 to 5 times more productive, if not better, right? If you use it right. It's a digital coworker or a co-pilot. That's where co-pilot came from.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. There was like a Stanford experiment that they did where they had developers on one side of the table, developers on the other side of the table. The one side used them as like a co-pilot, right? Like as bounce ideas off to do their coding. The other one used it as that's just a junior developer, and you kind of give them tasks, and you just and the co-pilot group did way better, and that's where it came from, and it's like. And it's a great name, and that's why we call them digital coworkers here. Because I agree.
Like that.
It's meant to make you a good employee, 3 to 5 times more productive and better.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, and it's it's going to keep going, right? So I know it's unfortunately not going to stop there, but man, it's a phenomenal tool now.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. So and tell me if I gave you a magic wand. For you to grow EdTech where it needs to go over the next 12 to 18 months, what would you use that wand to make happen?
Yeah, this one this is a good question because it's all my laser focus is on this AI Academy that I feel like there's a big hole right there. So it would really be, and I'm piecing it all together right now, but I don't have one agent that could just go, hey, here's my idea for an AI Academy. Go create it and have it come back to me as in a final form as possible, because there's so many moving parts. I feel like it's probably a pretty big ask, but I think we're pretty, one of these guys gave me an idea. He's like, why don't you use one of these tools like HeyGen or 11 Labs and just like dub your voice and don't have to do everything yourself? I'm like, oh, wow, that's a great idea.
It's a great idea. Right. It's a great idea.
Feel like, no, I need to deliver this myself. Just give me the whole thing, So if I have AI, press a button and create my academy for me, because I have it all here. I just got to get it out.
Yeah. And the best part is, get MVP out because, it doesn't need to be perfect. Get it out, get the feedback, and invite the feedback, because then you're just going to keep improving it, because your ability to improve it to the audience will be faster than ever. And Jeff, I think that's where you knock it out of the park.
Yeah. The trick is keeping up, because if it takes me a month to get out of course, I'm like, oh gosh, I got to go update that course, So how quick can we get the cycle out? Which talks to your point of like, perfect might be the enemy of the good here.
It is. And you don't need to be. That's the best part, because there's so many people that are just behind. And what you have going for you with higher ed, because they're slow to embrace, is that you can bring them along slower. Right. But if you invite some of the students, right, they're going to give you feedback on how to so you have 2 different audiences you can really play with to make that thing really sing for the audience.
Yeah, I like that. I should really include these students in my growth here too.
Yeah, we're excited. We'll have to check back with you in 6 months and see how things are going there.
Yeah, right.
Well, hey, Jeff, thank you for spending the time with us. This has been really, really insightful. We wish you nothing but the best, because I think that AI Academy can be game-changing for so many people in higher ed. And all it does is help bring the next generation on faster, empower them to use this tool the right way.
Thanks, Brent. It was really fun talking to you about everything we're doing.
Yeah. We can't wait to get this thing live, and we'll put all the links to EdTech Connect up on this podcast, and we'll probably also link to your podcast so we can get you guys some more viewership as well. Anyway, thank you for spending the time with us. That concludes this episode of Future Proofed, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.